Another province is putting its back-to-school plan to the test starting today. Students in Alberta start heading back to the classroom. This is day one for Calgary. But there's new anxiety this morning on top of the uncertainty. New guidelines from the province that are causing confusion over just how safe the classrooms will be. We'll look at the shifting message around physical distancing this hour and hear from a teacher in Edmonton, in fact, where kids go back to class as of tomorrow. New concerns in other provinces as well, with the start of the school year for them just around the corner. So we're going to make back to school our focus with you for the next couple of weeks, and we'll follow along as all of Canada's students finally return to class. Let's begin, though, with some of the other stories we have for you on this Tuesday morning.
President Trump will visit Kenosha, Wisconsin. This president will show up. He will go to cities where Americans are hurting.
The White House confirms that Donald Trump will visit Kenosha, Wisconsin today, even though the mayor and governor are asking him not to. Kenosha continues to grapple with unrest and ongoing protests following the police shooting of Jacob Blake.
Really what we're looking to do with all of this work is honor, remember, acknowledge what it is that those students who attended those schools suffered through.
Acknowledging Canada's dark past in hopes of fostering a better understanding. Ottawa today will formally recognize the historical significance of residential schools and will designate 2 of them as National Historic Sites. You just heard there the sound of pure joy as Toronto Raptors star Fred VanVleet is reunited with his kids. The NBA is allowing players to bring in some select family members to live in the bubble in Orlando. Students in Calgary as of this morning will be some of Alberta's first to see what back to school looks like in that province. Alberta classrooms are opening up again starting this week, but there's new worry for students and teachers' health after the province dropped a mandate for physical distancing in the classroom. As Shannon Scott tells us this morning, Alberta's top doctor says the change was meant to give some clarity, but for some it's having the opposite effect.
It's interesting how this is being interpreted.
Dr. Deena Hinshaw faced many questions about Public Health Order 33. Its release over the weekend caused a stir among parents and educators worried about what it means for students as they head back to class.
We had heard that there was some confusion about the fact that the masking guidance in our school guidance documents articulated that masking was required whenever 2 meters of distancing could not be maintained.
But Hinshaw says that's not the intention of the province's mask policy, and the new order clarifies that. Here's the wording of that new order. An operator of a school does not need to ensure that students, staff members, and visitors are able to maintain a minimum 2 meters distance from every other person when a student, staff member, or visitor is seated at a desk or table. The opposition NDP say the move is simply a way to bring public health orders in line with the government's back-to-school plan, a plan education critic Sarah Hoffman calls insufficient. She says Hinshaw shouldn't be the one facing questions about it.
Jason Kenney needs to stand to account for the decisions that he's making. I think it's also ridiculous that the Ministers of Education and Health aren't attending today's briefing for the media at 3:30. I think they should be there. I think they should own up for the decisions that they're making. I think parents are calling my office constantly, and I'm sure they're calling theirs too. And I think at a minimum, they should stand and account for their decisions instead of trying to brush off their decisions on the public service.
Both Edmonton and Calgary's public boards have said distancing isn't possible in most of their schools, and this order doesn't change anything as kids head back to class. Shannon Scott, CBC News, Calgary.
As we reconnect with an Alberta teacher whom you first met back in July when the province first announced its back-to-school plans, Rejwa Shibli teaches in the Edmonton region. Edmonton starts back up tomorrow. This morning, Rejwa is with us. It's lovely to see you again. Good morning.
Good morning, Heather. How are you?
Well, I'm well, but that's my question for you, first of all, because tomorrow's the big day. How do you think it's going to go?
Well, good. Honestly, it's going to be interesting how it's going to go. Like I said, like you mentioned at the top here, there's a lot of confusion now with the physical distancing and the Order 33 that came out on the weekend. For me, I'll be starting with students on Thursday. And so, yeah, it will be, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little anxious, to be honest, but I'm going to obviously do my best to support my students and do my part to keep them safe and myself safe.
For sure. Interesting is always a good choice of word. It allows us to go in any direction when you say it's going to be interesting. So tell us more about your personal situation and, what you know of what you're going to be encountering once things really start going when the students arrive.
Well, my personal situation is I'm going to be doing half in person and half online.
And when did you find that out?
So I found that out on Friday. And I found out yesterday my assignment for the online portion. And it's just because, again, parents and students have had this opportunity to choose whether they want to do online or in person. And boards and staff have been working tirelessly for the whole month trying to accommodate requests and for those that, because every parent and every family is different. They have their own situation that works best for them, and so they were trying to accommodate as much as they can. And so we're at the 11th hour here, and classes are changing, and classes are combining. So unfortunately, due to about 30% of many districts, the students going online, they've had to consolidate classes, and more teachers have had to go online because of that.
Okay, just be clear in all of that. You've just found out within the last week that you're doing half and half in person online, and you just found out what you're going to be teaching within the last couple of days as well. So how does that compare to normal, and how does that last minute finding out about that, how does that affect how you prepare? Tell me both of those answers.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's usually normally we would find out in June, and then before, if there wasn't a pandemic happening, when our assignments were before we were off for the summer. And that's always the case. Because of the pandemic, we've had to adjust this. Well, not me, honestly, our admin who have been so tireless have had to adjust the schedule. And then as soon as something new comes out from the government, the school boards have had to scramble and adjust again and again. They've adjusted probably 4 times now of scheduling, just with new things coming out and new mandates coming out and things that they have to accommodate for. So it's been just all hands on deck trying to get everyone ready for the start of the week. And it's honestly, I'm glad I'm not an administrator, and I'm glad I'm not on the top of the school board, because I can't imagine how hard it's been.
Somehow you're keeping your spirits up in the face of all of this uncertainty. You were telling us back in July when we first met you that you were going to be doing some online teaching over the summer. Now you'll be doing it for the real regular school year. And tell me how you found that, your first experience with that, and how you think it's going to be when so many more students are going to be doing it now.
Yeah, the online experience was honestly the way the district set it up was great, honestly, for what it is. Online is never going to be perfect. We all know that. We all know having that social aspect does get lost a bit, but in the scenario of keeping everyone safe, it was the best we could do. Honestly, I thought it went pretty well.
Okay.
For the circumstances.
So at this point, just hours away from starting back up again, what's your biggest concern, Rejwa?
Well, my biggest concern is just there's so much confusion, like you mentioned, with this order that came out on the weekend. The physical distancing, with all due respect to the government, I understand that their order was to provide more clarification, but it honestly just created more confusion, more anxiety and angst for parents, students, staff. Parents and students just that week and the week before, depending on the district, had to determine whether they're going to do in person or online. So having that come out after, just as the timing was not set up well.
How are you going to handle that in your classroom and the part that you're actually teaching in person?
Well, class sizes, like I said, because they've had to, again, every Alberta student is getting less funding during a pandemic, and that's a fact. To say that we're depending on the federal government and what the money that they are going to be giving to the provinces tells you a lot about how class sizes seem to be kind of not the priority. Right now, this government, class sizes have actually gone up due to so many choosing online instead of going down. And so for me, myself, I'm going to do my best to distance my students in my class. The thing that's really frustrating for a lot of teachers is that like students don't sit like robots facing forward, not moving. Like that's just not it. As teachers don't stay far away back from their students, like especially in the younger years. That whole like it's okay, they can take off their mask if they're facing forward, not moving. As teachers, not part of the cohort if they're far enough. Like that just doesn't happen in a classroom.
I think we may hear more about this today if there's a provincial briefing with, again, more clarity, because this is a big issue today for sure. Resh, I want to ask you, there was a story that came out of the UK today. It was a pretty interesting one. Thousands of British teachers were surveyed. And what they said was they thought British students were 3 months behind because of the lockdown. So I'm wondering whether you think students, in your own particular circumstance, but I guess we can talk broadly, whether students are behind because of how last year ended, and whether it's going to be perhaps even a further setback given what we know of how this coming year is going to be handled, and given, you know, the lack of prep time for teachers like you. What do you think is the impact on the student situation?
Like, it's hard to tell how they're going to be, honestly. Like, again, for us, it was a few months that but we continued online schooling with that. So yeah, they might have lost a little here and there, but we won't really know until obviously we start this semester. And if, let's say, they took a previous class of prereq and they're now moving on, we will know what they lack. But the thing that I do is this is actually just in general, like this is very common with when a student comes from one class to another. Sometimes they lack some of that basic foundation, and we can get them caught up. We do a lot of review and so on. Now, do I agree with those British teachers? Again, I feel like there needs to be more research. Obviously, it's still early, but it could be. But I don't know if it's going to be that severe yet. We'll see.
You'll see.
It depends how this year. Yeah, it depends how this year goes, and if we end up in a total lockdown. That's what I don't understand, Heather. And sorry to cut you off, but I just don't understand how this government that seems to, like, the welfare of the students and the staff seems to not be a priority for this government. So and then they want to keep the schools open and the economy going, which we all do. We do not want teachers. Nobody wants schools closed. But if you don't put safety as a priority, we're just going to end up closing them again. And so why aren't we just, supporting that, funding it so that we can keep the economy, so we don't even hurt those students, like you were saying about what UK teachers are saying. Like, why are we not doing the steps and investing in the beginning instead of rolling the dice and risking that?
You'll get a really good indication in a very short period of time once they start coming back to class. Reshwa, we're going to keep in touch with you. Thank you again for this conversation. Just as you get set to head back, wish you all the best and safe environment there. Thanks a lot, Reshwa.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.
Reshwa Shibley, as she gets set to teach in the Edmonton region this week.